Okay, sorry. Phase 3, finishing interior and exterior walls. So with the building put together and the roof completed and door completed, everything was set aside and started working on the completed walls section. So what I do is you can see my glass palette there, and I took different coloring in the little yellowish, whitish item at the top of the orange paint is actually a sponge ripped apart. So I take the sponge and, well, I put out my material. In this case, it was, I use acrylic paints, and there's orange, I think it's burnt sienna, and red, which is, it's like a dark brownish red. And I take that little sponge and dip it into the different colors, applying it to the sides of the building. Next slide. Okay, so what I've done is, you can see the sponge there. I've gone into the burnt sienna, and I've just take the sponge and dab it onto the brickwork. It doesn't have to completely cover everything, but I do this all the way around the whole building, all on the brickwork, and I don't touch. You can touch the stonework; it doesn't matter. You'll see later on how the stonework is done. But the brickwork, just dabbing the one color. And next slide. Going again with the different colors. I keep on dabbing, like I'll take the red, you can see here, and go over top of the brown and dab it and fill it in. So I got a variety of the two colors on there. And then I went in with the orange and did a dabbing with the orange all the way around the building. Next slide. Now, what had happened here was, this is the first time I tried this method, and I had overdone it, as you can see. Now, the photograph doesn't, well, I guess the photo on the left, you can see it's on pretty heavy, but you can see the difference in the three colors. If you look to the right, you can see a bit of the orange, the reds, and the dark browns. Now, it looks pretty heavy done here. And as I say, I did overdo it, but it can be corrected. Next slide. So what had happened was, this is actually a better picture, but you can see the difference in the brick. You can see that some of the dark brick, some of the light brick. And this was the effect that I was going for. Next slide. Okay, again, going around the building, showing the difference. It actually has a nice brick color and finish to it. Next slide. So what I did was I took some weathering mix. This is Hunter Line, which is I use quite a bit. It's a fantastic product. In this case, it was shale. And what I wanted to do was blend the colors in so that the brickwork itself blended and everything started to blend and match together. And when you put this stuff on, you use it very sparingly and spread it. So you take a paintbrush, dip it in, put it on, and spread into a large area. Don't put it on as it comes out of the bottle on your brush. What you want to do is put your brush in, get a bunch of it or a dab of it, go to the brickwork and work the brush back and forth, up and down, and blend it in so that it doesn't give you that dark shale color. You want it to blend into the mortar and the brickwork itself. And when you're done, as you can see, you'll see later on, everything starts to blend in nicely. Next slide. So what I did was, after I got the brickwork to the way I wanted it, and it would look pretty good, I went into the interior walls and the upper part of the walls and painted everything a gray color, which are going to be the color for the interior. So everything was painted, and the stonework on the bottom was all painted with the gray also. You'll see it'll come together later on. Next slide. So once that was all done, I went over the parts of the building where there would be cement, and it's an older building. So I used the aged cement and did the window casings and the sills all the way around the building. Next slide. So then what I did was the stonework. Now the way I do my stonework is I have a this is all latex paint. And I have 5 bottles, which I number 1 to 5. And you can pick out the colors you want to use. And here you can see I've used black, red, dark sienna, light tan, light brown. And as I say, I start with the first bottle, number 1. And I go around the whole building that has the stonework, and I paint individual stones that color. Then I go to color number 2, repeat the process, color number 3, color number 4, color number 5, till I get everything, all the stones painted. Now, the stones, when you look at them, you can leave them like that, but stones are not that, when you look at stone, it's not that brilliant. It's just not that color. So what I do is, if you go to the next slide, is I take the hunter line stain that I told you about, the shale, and I blend all the stone. And by doing this, what you're doing is you cut down the color dramatically. It's still there, and the stonework blends together, but it looks more realistic by blending. You can see the same that I used on the brick. That building before, when you saw it, was extremely red, orange, and by doing the same thing with the shale on it, which I'd showed you earlier, it blends everything in nicely. It gives a bit of an age look to the building. Next slide. So I started concentrating on the interior, and this is wainscoting that I had done. It's 4 feet high. I'm sorry. I measured one of the wainscoting to come up about a fourth of the way up the walls. So I measured it, and this is what I'd done. I cut out the 3 pieces and put it, next slide, put it inside the building. So the building had received a floor, and I put the wainscoting in all the way around, and then topped it off with a top sill all the way around, down the sides where the window openings were. Next slide. You can see I've added the door in, which has been painted, and finished up the interior where the wainscoting is. Next slide. And you can see through the windows how the wainscoting comes up slightly above the windows. The cement work around the building. Next slide. Okay, phase 4. We're going to finish the windows and the roof completion. Are there any questions on phase 3?
What did you use for the wainscoting?
It was scribe siding. Just the,
You know what spacing?
I'm sorry?
Do you recall what spacing, Gary?
Yeah, I think it was a 6-inch HO.
Just a question on behalf of the group as well. Do you have a bill of material that we can send out to everyone when I send out the video recording of the presentation today?
I do not.
Okay.
It's like when I scratch build my buildings, I've got a supply of scratch building materials, and I go to the supply and just pick out what I think will look good in there.
But you don't keep a running list to help us?
I don't
Okay.
keep a list, no.
All right. What kind of wood? I'm going back a little bit here, but I don't see any other questions, and nothing has come in on the chat, by the way, Gary. What wood did you use? What type of wood did you use for the trusses?
It was cedar. That was it's scrap cedar. That what I would do is I would get scrap material from the wood shop, and I just maybe spend a day or an afternoon just cutting up all different sizes of material and putting it into my scratch building wood piles. And it would be anywhere from poplar. It could be, in this case, it was cedar that was used. And they're 12 by 12s.
So
10
you're
by
using
10.
remnants from a commercial wood shop?
No. Now, the only commercial wood is from, oh,
So when you
or
said the wood shop, you're talking about your own wood shop?
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
All
sorry.
right. So
Yeah,
you're making your own strip wood?
you're right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Don't see any other questions. No one has unmuted. So I'm going to continue to share, Gary.
Okay. Okay, phase 4 is finishing the windows and roof completion. So as you can see, I've put in the door. The door has been painted. The door was painted green. This is CN green. I'm a CN fan, and I have a lot of CN paint, so I use it up. And you can see the doors have been put in, and the gaps have been not totally eliminated, but it fits fairly well. You can see the blending of the stonework and how everything from the top of the bricks, like the brickwork and the sills and the thing, all have come to blended together nicely. Next slide. So you saw earlier that I had put the floor and the wainscoting in, and I did a staining, just a light brownish underline, again, stain. And I went in and I stained the floor and the wainscoting. And just a shot showing the interior with the stained floor. And a shot of the building again, just looking into the interior. Now, what I've done is I've taken the clear acetate plastic clear sheets and cut them to the size of the window and fitted them in. And using, you can either use canopy glue or I use tacky glue, and just touch the edges slightly with it and fit it in. And they fit into the framework of the window that projects after you do the casting. There's a little ridge all the way around that window on the inside that you can attach that glazing to, and that was put in. Next slide. Okay, what I'd done, I'd had these windows. These are laser cut windows, and when I went to put them in, the building required 3 of them, and all identical size. These had to do a little bit of scratch building on them. As you can see, if you look at the ends of each window, I had to add a little bit of material because it did not, the window itself did not fit perfectly into that opening. Since then, I've had a new set of windows cut by ITLA, had cut me new windows to fit into these buildings because I have a lot of these castings. And so what I had done, as you can see, just added a few pieces. The top right, you can see some scratch pieces where I've cut up material and put these 3 buildings or these 3 window framing together to match the opening of that building. If you look closely to the center of the window itself, you'll see a couple of little black lines on either side of the center of the building. And what they are is, if you wish to have those windows open, they break apart and that window will actually open out. Now, with the acetate that's in there already, you can't do it with these windows. But if you wish to have done that so the window was open, you could have custom cut a piece of acetate for the back of that frame, leaving the opening in the open part of the window, and put a small piece of acetate on it once it was open, and you could display the windows as open if you wished. Now, these were then placed into the 3 openings of the building. Next slide. As you can see, so it doesn't look too bad. Once they're painted. Next slide. So I painted them CN green and let them dry and then installed. And they look really nice. They're nice looking windows. Next slide. Again, just showing the other side of the building. Next slide. So then it came to the roof and painting the roof. The ends of the roof and where the boards were put on was painted a light CN wash. It wasn't put on full strength. I wanted some of the boards to show through and get a little streaking here and there. Now the roof itself was painted. It's Tamiya black green paint. It goes on green, and when it dries black. And it's sort of a greenish, dark black color, which is a nice slate color, in my opinion. So next slide. And then what I did was I took pastels and very carefully with the pastels, went over the shingles and roof in the areas, putting on the brown and black pastels with a little bit of white here and there. Next slide. And there's the building in place with the roof on it. Next slide. And there's the completed building. Now I added the exhaust chimney on the top, did a little bit of weathering around the building, added some signage. See the pastels on the roof shingles. Colors, whites, browns, blacks. A little bit of runoff from the exhaust fan. Next slide. A little weathering on the sill around the building. A bit of weathering on the stonework with pastels. Next slide. And that's the end of phase 4. Any questions?
I have a question for you, Gary, while we're waiting for any others to come in. You had said toward the beginning that the doors were large at the front in order to allow an engine to go in. So
Diesel engine.
You could modify the floor in order to have track laid for an engine to go inside?
Yeah, it wasn't a steam or diesel engine. It was a actual engine from a diesel.
Okay.
Okay. Or any large heavy equipment that would require large doors to be put on the building.
Gotcha. Okay. So a related question, just because I haven't been around the older prototype, how would they transport the diesel engine for servicing into a shop like that? Would they've had forklifts then, or would it be on a truck that needed to be then the item hoisted off? Like, how would they go about that?
Probably a heavy crane.
Okay. All right. And then to get the item actually into the building?
They would slide it on rollers.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, you'll see later on if I'm pretty sure there's a shot there showing the trackage that was used to hold the item, which happens to be a diesel, an engine from a diesel engine.
Okay, so you've got actually a couple of shots of the prototype.
No, just the model that I had put
Okay.
in there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Any other questions from anyone? Just unmute and. Doesn't look like there are, and there's nothing in chat, Gary. So onward with number 5.
Phase 5 is basically just showcasing the finished building. And at the end, you'll see where the building eventually ended up. Now, as I said before, talking to my buddy Pat, he talked me into putting lighting inside the building. That's why the pins that would hold the roof in place were eliminated. So the roof, as you can see, boards were laid down through the trusses, and 2 lights were placed. These are small LED, very bright LED lights, and the wiring was strung through. And the you can see the building itself on the open doors. What you were talking about earlier, Paul, is if you look at that diesel engine, on the bottom of it is two I-beams. And you can see from where the that type of equipment had been put in and out of the building. They would just basically bring that over with either a crane or a truck and roll that up to the doorway and then just roll that on to the inside of the building. You'll see more later on. And after the roof, I've also decided to detail the interior of the building. Next slide. So looking down into the building, you can see the crane. Now this is a movable crane that would move up to the door, pick up the item, and then slide it into position and lay it down. The workbenches are all scratch built. The machinery itself is not. It's HO scale machinery that I had for a while. I had added people inside, equipment, welding tanks. As I say, the workbenches are scratch built. Those are castings that I had made. Put in paper, folded paper on the workbenches. Some signs on the wall, shelving on the wall, etc. And this building is heated with radiators. It's steam heat, which would come from a central location, which we'll see later. So there's three of the radiators by each window. Next slide. Okay, this is looking in. And again, you can see the crane that would have lifted that unit and put it into place on those. The unit would have been attached to those I-beams and slid into place. Next slide. Just showing through one of the windows on the side. You can see the stonework and the brickwork as I said earlier, had blended in nicely. Came out nice color even after I made that big boo-boo, which we all do, and that's how we learn. Next slide. Again, just showing a different position. Now, when you're looking at this building, you may be wondering, where does the electrical lines come in? As I progress through these slides, you'll see what I've done. Just showing some of the machinery, the workbench, a couple of the workers talking to each other, and the signs, think safety on the inside, and then, of course, the caution signs and that on the doors on the outside. Next slide. Another angle looking towards the front, showing the machinery. Next slide. Again, just showing different angles that didn't come up. A couple of work cabinets on the walls, garbage can, gentleman sweeping the floor. Nice diesel engines, I think there. Next slide. Another angle. That's acetylene tanks. Acetylene tanks were made from scrap spurs, plastic spurs that you get off of your models when you're building them. The little chair was just in my furniture scrap pile. There's some oil cans, crates, chain sitting there beside the welding tanks. And showing the front of the building. It's a Canadian National. That's what I model. So I put the Canadian National sign up on top. Now this is this building here is the second building that I built, and there's actually three of them, and I wanted all three buildings because they're in the Indian uh, where the roundhouse and all that is area, their turntable. I wanted them all to match, which you'll see later. Next slide. Okay, we put the roof on, and I showed you earlier where I said I wanted some of the wood to be distressed on the bottom, sort of it's rotting away. And the framing of the upper area of the roof wall, I didn't do like on the doors, they're pretty solid colors. On the boards that are up above, there's different colorations where they've aged, started to rot away at the bottom. Next slide. Okay, so what had happened was, as I said, Pat had talked me into putting lighting in, and I'm glad I did because it's very nice. So you can see in the corner, there's a pipe. And what I had done was taken a piece of plastic and drilled a hole in the bottom of the floor and ran that piece of plastic through the building. So basically what it looks like is a great big either vent pipe or drain pipe. That was run through, and I fed the wires down through. And as they come up, there's those two little silver things at the very top off to the right in the black area. Those are clips that actually clip off if you wanted to totally remove the roof, which join the wiring. So the wires run down through the building, and when the building is placed on the layout, it goes through the base of the layout down underneath, and then connects over to a switch area where a little switch is there that I can turn the lights on and off. If I ever want to remove it, all I got to do is just take those two little clips off, and everything can be removed. Next slide. So there's a close-up showing, you can see the little off in the top left corner there of the building, silver clips that join the wiring to the wiring of the light structures. Next. Okay, this is the shots that were taken with the roof in place and the lighting turned on, just to give you an idea of how it lights up the interior of the building. Next slide. And then looking through the windows when the room is dark, you can see through. It gives a lot of character to the inside of the building. Next slide. Same as on the other side, looking in. Next slide. Same thing again. And again. Now, what had happened was where I was going to place this building, it needed a water supply. So I ended up with a roll of tape. This was large carpet tape. And the little dowel that was inside cardboard. I took a look at it and I thought, oh, okay, I can make a water supply tank for the building. And that's what I did. I took some, I took that cardboard, did some strip wood, as you can see, and glued it all the way around the side. Added the tie lines that hold the tank together. And you see when you're doing that, the tanks are not as much pressure at the top as in the bottom. So as you go down adding these lines, you get closer to the bottom because that's where all the pressure is. Added some filler pipes and little valves on the bottom for draining and filling. Put a walkway across the top of it. Now that walkway across the top, earlier you saw that I had taken those windows and done some a little bit of kit bashing on them. And these were the leftover pieces from that window. And I used it as railing for the top of that walkway on top of the water tank, and then added a ladder. And this would be placed into position, you'll see as we go along to where the building sits. Next slide. That's showing another angle. The water was to simulate the water in the tank. I used the it's clear. I think it's called clear crystal. So put a little top inside and did a little bit of coloring, and then added the clear crystal, which goes in white. But when it dries clear. So it just gives the effect of some water being in the tank. Next slide. Okay, so where does the building sit on the layout? This is the layout. And as you can see on the back of the building sits in this position right as the curve comes around and goes into the station area in the main yard area. And I added this structure here on the back of it because that's the heating system where they get all the heat, which runs to the three buildings. Now, a little bit of you can see where the water tank was placed, and that would run from that tank over to the machine shop for water, and also run to the other building that's on the top left, which is the first structure I built in this series, scratch built, and it's the engine house. Next slide. So there you can see the building where it's sitting. You get a good view of the engine facility. Now that was the first one using the same castings, and also it's quite large. It's 3 castings on one side and 2 castings on the back side and front side. Now the third building in this series is the car shops, and it sits to the far right. It's been built, completely detailed inside and finished. The roof on this building, it's 3 sides on one side and then 2 sides on the other. So it's sort of an L shape. But the third building in the series that I'd done, it's full size, 3 and 3. It's quite large. So that shows where the machine shop sits in relationship to the engine house, which is quite close because they'd be shipping or moving heavy material from the engine house over to the machine shop. Next slide. A little bit of a close-up. Sorry for the clarity of the photograph, but shows the building. Blends in quite well. The brickwork came out a little dark, but not too bad. On the when I did the third building, I learned from my mistake and didn't repeat that mistake on the third building. And you can see some of the detail around the outside, just a blend of the building in and with the scenery that's there. Next slide. And that's the end. Any questions?
Nicely done, Gary.
Thanks very much, Bob. It's good to see you.
Great model there, Gary.
Thank you very much, George.
Gary, I've got another materials question for you. Going back to, I think it was part one, you mentioned the underlay that you use before you put down the shingles and that you like to use wood instead of cardboard. Where did you obtain that material that you used and how thick is it?
It's about 1/32. You can get it um, if you go to the any of the like Home Depot or things like that, you can get very, very thin sheets.
So veneer.
Veneer. Yeah, you can use a veneer. Veneer is even thinner. But the reason I don't like the cardboard is I've used cardboard roofs before, and I found over time they tend to warp. Even when they're well braced, they still tend to warp. So I really don't like to use it. I try to use material that's stiff enough and thin enough that goes on. So I happen to have this, and oh, I'm terrible with names. The manufacturer that we went to visit down in Port Dover, he manufactures scribing and
Oh, Mount Albert and Fast
Mount
Track.
Albert, right? You can get it. You can get sheets from them, and you can also any of the producers of strip wood and that they have the sheets. So
Gerald, you had unmuted yourself. Did you have a question?
No, I was just going to congratulate Gary on what I think is an excellent model, but other people congratulate him. So, but thank you, Gary, for taking the time to do this, and it's really interesting.
thank you very much, Gerald.
George, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, well, when Gary was talking about cutting his own wood in that, years ago, I was at Mount Albert for their open house. That would have been when they were down St. Catharines Way or Hamilton Way. And in the back, they had big boxes of leftover scraps that, they couldn't cut right. And it was Don James and I that were there. And, we were asking about it. He says, oh, we got people come and take that for firewood. And I says, well, can we take a box? So if you ever get down to Mount Albert again, maybe ask if they have any of their scrap wood, because we each got a, fair sized box that I've cut up too to use as bracing and all sorts of other stuff. So, and the other option is, imagine that laser art. If you need some thick stuff, maybe you can talk to them about, getting, just buying some of their material off them. They're not too far away, being in Dorchester, so they're in our area.
Just east of London. Thanks, George, for that.
Also, Paul, I've same as George on our trips to see that company. We had asked the question what they're doing with the scraps, and he said he took us out to the back. He said, "There's all that's going to go into the bin." So a few of us went home with a few boxes of scraps.
Which company are you talking about? ITLA or Fast Tracks?
Fast Tracks.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
the Northeastern Lumber. The also, if you go to if you're in the States, Hobby Lobby, but here in Michael's, you can get that thin material also.
Ah, okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Lots of sources, some closer to home, others not, but good to know where we can get materials. Anything else to share? Any other questions for Gary? Well, it's just past 10:30. Gary, you've given us a great 90-minute clinic, and can't thank you enough on behalf of those who've taken the time out of their Saturday morning to attend. Just a reminder that we will convert the video of today's program into something that you can watch at home, and within 48 to 72 hours, I'll have an email out to all of you with that attachment. Also, if you noticed or had logged on when we had the little scroll going at the very beginning, we will have an email coming out to certainly all the WOD members within probably a week or two with an invitation for our final activity of the year, which will be an opportunity to ride on the Waterloo Central Railway. We've worked out a deal so we can get a reduced price from what the public normally pays. And it should be a good, if the weather in particular cooperates with us, it should be a good afternoon. So please watch for that in your inboxes soon. Any last comments, Gary?
No, just I hope it's been helpful to some people, and do some experiments with plaster and molding. It's amazing what you can do. You know, the hobby's getting a little expensive right now, and scratch building really helps.
Well, and you've inspired me. My wife stopped down a little while ago during our break to wonder how things were going. And I let her know that from about 20 years ago, I have a downtown deco, a plaster building that is waiting to be built as soon as I finish constructing my layout. So you've inspired me, Gary. So thank you for that.
Very
Any
good.
last comments from anyone? All right, well, I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to turn off the Zoom. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary.